If you're only watching TQQQ and SOXL, you may be missing out on some of the biggest leverage ETF moves. Late in March of this year, TQQQ went on a run of 136%. Not bad, but this leverage ETF 2 times of a popular stocks ran up 1,065%. That's a huge difference. Well, let's dive into that today. It's moves like this that got me checking out, are there other leverage ETFs on stocks that we need to be watching? I'm not saying that in this particular case, the 2-time leverage ETF of Marvell, which ran up huge, is going to repeat. But today I'm going to compare 3 separate market periods where TQQQ and SOXL bottomed and the stocks that outperformed those 2 workhorses of leverage ETF did. But the problem here is not that TQQ and SOXL stopped working. The problem is what you may miss by watching only those 2. We're missing high performance and high probability targets of opportunity that we want to be taking advantage of. But how much opportunity are people who only watch TQQ and SOXL missing? Let's look at the numbers. The pattern repeats itself, but never repeats it exactly. The sector rotation was starting to take place. The Mag 7 stocks were being replaced by some of these more powerful stocks like Robinhood, like Rocket Lab, like MDL. Notice also that there was a shift. In 2025, Robinhood was at the top of the list. However, now it's been relegated down to the bottom of the list. Doesn't mean it's not strong. It just means that it was sliding out of favor. So remember, these are not recommendations or forecasts of what may happen. They're observations of what has happened in the past. And oftentimes what we'll find is the future will at least rhyme with the past. These 80% numbers are projections on what would be a reasonable amount of the potential run that we could capture. And they simply illustrate what a trade might capture without buying the exact bottom or selling the exact top. Real results will always differ. The buy trigger on each one of these was the same. The weekly TSI crosses and the rising tide that happened on the MACD weekly. So are you currently trading only TQQ and SOXL? In 2023, we get an uptick on the TQQ right there. And that happens to be almost the first week in January, and then it makes this run from here to here, and basically through July. Really nice, strong, powerful move. That equates to a move from low to high of about 192%. Now, what we did was we measured the move also on SMCI. And on SMCI, same point, but notice it didn't trigger until later in the month. That brings in an important piece of information, is that the leverage ETF on the stocks tend to trigger within plus or minus 2 to 4 weeks of the trigger that we get on SOXL or TQQQ. Remember that. And that's on both sides, because on this one, same run. So the 17th of January is where? It is right there. Check that out. We get about a little bit about 300+% to the upside on SMCI. Now, SMCI is the actual stock. So I had to simulate multiplying that times 2, and we get a move of over 700% if we had the leverage ETFs available at that time. So we see that pattern repeat itself several times. What happened in 2025? Robinhood was the top performer. Note, it actually turned on the same week as TQQQ, which was the week of April 21st. Let's compare the moves from low to high again, and then TQQ, there was its high, and then would drop from there. And what about Robinhood's 2-time leverage ETF? Over 1,000% move from high to low, and it gave us multiple opportunities to get into a potential trade on that. And as you can see there, Robinhood topped out at on 10/6. I'm pointing out the differences in dates because oftentimes the bottoms happen more or less within that plus or minus 4-week period. The tops can happen much more quickly, but as you see, that's about 4 weeks prior to the top that happened on TQQQ. Drive home a point, watch what happens to Robinhood as we slide into that move that started in March of 2026. Robinhood slid from number 1 in 2000 all the way to number 12 in that move that we just had from March to June in 2026. Is that a bad thing? No, but it's indicative of what we're going to lead into is we may want to look at having a equally distributed portfolio of the stocks with these strong moving leveraged ETFs. The stock leveraged ETF that did the best in the move from March to June of 2026 was Marvell MVLL. Notice TSI crossed over on 4/6, the week of 4/6, and then continued to run up and ran up very nicely. What about the Marvell? Well, as you note here on Marvell, it crossed right there, which was back in the first part of March 2026, and then its run all the way to the high right there was a little bit about over 1,300%. So the market window in this case, yeah, they were each a little bit different. However, the stable of strong stocks remained the same, and the production or results was really interesting, even though the leadership shifted within the list. So looking at utilizing a basket of strong performing, potentially strong performing stock leverage ETFs. So the way I do that is I do have a larger list of maybe 20 plus leverage ETFs. But if you're watching all of them on a weekly basis, we'll know how to prune down the list to the top 10 stocks. The second goal is to avoid depending on just a couple of tickers like SOXL and TQQQ. In all 3 periods, an equal weighted basket produced very strong results. As we see here, from March to June, combined return on that 413%. Well, what about in April to November 2025? 49%. That's based on the 80%, just taking that. And then back in 2023, 166%. And what it does, though, is it spreads and provides us a little bit more diversity. And stay with us. I'm going to show you the exact entry and exit parameters off of the weekly charts. The timing aspect on entering in both of the potential trades, we're triggering off of the cross of the PSI in the bottom zone. And I'm looking at any cross that is below the 0 line here, but a cross here on TQQQ, and then over here, a cross on SOXL. Very simple. Wait for the weekly cross, and it's going to potentially provide an order somewhere around the 10-week moving average. That's the 50-day moving average equivalent. Same thing over here on SOXL. We get the cross, we get the move above the 50, and that's the trigger to enter. I stay in the position, but I'm looking primarily at the reversal being a PSI cross, and then once it hits the top and crosses back down, the MACD momentum starts to fall out on the MACD histogram. Keeping up with the changing leadership and timing these windows takes preparation. And that's why we created the AutoPilot trading service. Members receive weekly timing and trade planning based on this type of analysis every week, along with the support from other traders on our Discord channel. So you don't have to trade alone. Check out the link down in the description for getting on board with the AutoPilot traders. Now let's look at how to keep the list current. Well, one of the ways to keep the list current is just review. Go through the list on a weekly basis at a minimum, and then, of course, monthly. And I find that the list stays fairly stable. If a stock floats to the surface, like Rocket Lab fell off, but now it's back on the master list again. So looking for a big turn. What kind of expectations should we have to be able to trade this on a yearly basis? But what I'm finding is you get about 2 to 3 strong signals per year. Now, if you have an itchy mouse finger, yeah, this isn't your typical swing trading, but the potential is significant especially if you can spread capital across a complete stable of strong stocks. Diversification does not remove risk, but it keeps one ticker from carrying the whole plan and all the risk. What is your leveraged ETF stable right now? Is it just TQQ and SOXL? Or do you have single leveraged ETFs too? Just leave a comment. What I've learned is that I need to stop being just loyal to one or two of these leveraged ETF tickers. I need to stop trying to predict one winner. The basket seems like an excellent way to, one, diversify, but also potentially add some extra of to returns. I can stop chasing the hottest leveraged ETF and wait for them to come to me because I'm trading the weekly signals. TQQQ and SOXL remain excellent core tools. I am not getting rid of those. This is about staying ready for the other leaders that may appear during the same market window. If you want to see how the complete AutoPilot trading system finds, times, and manages these opportunities, watch the video that's up next.